Welcome to Deco Guide, the only app designed to help you navigate your college and career journey in the quickest and most affordable way. This podcast is brought to you by EdTechity, dedicated to opening doors to higher education and career opportunities for all.
So with that being said, how do I figure out my best time management skills if I'm not a student that has the best time management skills, or organization, study strategies, and other, anything that goes along with that? Is there any resources that are available to me, or how I can better myself to be the better student or the best student I can possibly be in terms of time management and organizing myself and trying to figure out my study routine?
Yeah, that is a complex question, because how one chooses to be organized will vary from person to person. And there's a lot of different tools that you can use. You can use a planner. Some folks like to use their phone. Some people like to print out calendars for themselves. One of the things that I've seen is a student will print out their class schedule, and they will base their study schedule around that. So let's just say, for example, if you have classes Monday through Thursday, and let's say if all of your classes are typically between the hours of 8 and 2, then you can create your study strategies or your study schedule around your class schedule. So I'm always like, preview, look at the information before you're going to go to class. So whether that's in your course syllabus and things like that, write down questions that you hope the lecture will answer for you, or questions that you may have about it, right? And that could be like an hour or so of study time. Then you go to your class, you take your notes. If there's time in between that class and the next one, you have time to review what you just learned in that class right after. And if there's time before the next class, after you do that, then do previewing again. So that way you kind of know what to expect before you walk into that class. Then after that class, review what you just learned. That might mean rewriting your notes. There's a lot of different things you can do in between that time, depending on how much time you have. And you keep doing that. So then once you're done with the class for the day, then you prioritize what you're going to focus on. Complete a homework assignment for the first class, or re-review your notes from earlier in that day. You might have to rewrite them, right? So that's just one strategy that you can use to kind of keep yourself organized. And as you progress through the term, each week builds off of the previous week. So if you find yourself in the middle of week 4 and you've just taken a quiz in all of your classes and you're like, oh, I can relax now. No, you don't. As you learn week's 4 material, you got to go back and still review what you learned in the first 3 weeks. And you do that as you keep going along through the term, because that's less time you're going to have to spend studying for a quiz or a midterm, because you're constantly reviewing the content on a daily, weekly, monthly basis until the term is over. So that's just one way to do it. Some folks like to go, again, purchase a planner from their bookstore. They want to write everything down, right? So that's just a study schedule you can create for yourself. The other one is like a term schedule, where there's these calendars that you can get online that will show you, a calendar month, and they'll have it maybe even broken down based off of your whole entire term. So the school that I work at, we have 12-week terms. So what you can do is, with this particular document, you can go through your course syllabus for all of your classes and put when all of your homework assignments are due, when all of your quizzes are going to be, when your midterms are going to be, any projects that you might have to do when those things are due, any writing assignments that are due. Put all of that on a term sheet. And each day of each week, as you move forward and you complete those things, you can cross it off. That's another way that you can stay organized. Because if you don't do something like that, and let's say they put your stuff on Blackboard or Canvas, then you'll have to check those things every day to find out what you have coming up. So you're just saving yourself time in the long run. If your schedule is already set for the term, then immediately start making a weekly study schedule. If you are enrolled in 15 units, then you should be planning at least 30 hours a week. 2 hours for every 1 unit you are enrolled in. That's how much time you should be dedicating to that particular course. So if it's a 3-unit course, you need to plan at least 6 hours a week for that class. If it's a 5-unit course, you need to be planning at least 10 hours a week for that class. And that's what it takes to be successful.
It all sounds like impossible, right? Because there's only 24 hours a day, and realistically, you're spending at least 6 hours a day in class, and then and it's a daunting idea to have to spend another 10 hours after that, right, to study or whatever you need to do. But I think you know yourself best as a student, and you know, like, I'm gonna be for real right now. You know your best, like, you know which classes you can possibly kind of like put it on the back burner, you know what I mean? And then which classes you might need to study a little bit more for. And that's not to say that you should just be like, F it. Like, it is what it is, right? Because, like, I've been there. And I promise you, when I say F it, whatever, and then come midterm, comes final season, I'm like, dang, like, I really screwed myself over, you know? So take it with a grain of salt about how often you should dedicate to every single class, right? Because, like I said, you know yourself more as a student, and you know which classes you might be able to, like, put on the back burner and you'll still be okay, and which classes you should really hone in on and focus on. And if they are your classes for your major or your designated major, those are probably the classes that you want to pay the most attention to, because that's the career you're going into. But that's not to say that you should say F it to your other classes, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still your transcript, it's still your grade in your 4 years. And they look at that holistically if you're trying to get into a grad program. So it's just kind of like a game, honestly, that you're having to figure out how to be successful in college, but also where you need to prioritize your mental health and prioritize your self-care, because that's also equally important while you're in this journey.
100%. I mean, you have to take care of yourself first and foremost. But if you find that one class is taking up most of your time over other classes, then that's a red flag or indicator of poor time management. You cannot let one class dominate the amount of time that you're spending on it, and it's taken away from your other classes. That can't happen. You may in your mind think that, oh, this class is not as important as the other classes, but they're all important because they all contribute to your overall GPA. And that's going to matter, especially if you are a student at a community college and you have aspirations of transferring to a CSU or a UC. Now, there is a fine line between being so grade conscious, right? And just not caring about it at all. I'm not saying that, but if you focus on really understanding the content, focus on the process, not the end result, right? That's it's like an old thing with athletes. Focus on getting better 1% each day, then ultimately you're going to get the results that you want. So it's all about consistency. It's all about being disciplined as well. You know, even though you may feel that a class is easy and I don't have to put as much time on it as another class, and that very well may be true, but you still need to make sure that you put in the minimum amount of time for those classes so you can feel good about the content. And then the classes that are more challenging for you, you're going to have to spend more time with them. But again, we're talking about over the course of a week. We're not saying that you need to study in 4 or 5 hour chunks a day. That's not realistic, especially if you have kids or if you work a part-time or a full-time job. Okay. The key is to put the time in that you can and do it consistently over time. You cannot allow yourself to slip or fall behind, because now you find yourself in just getting it done mode and you're not learning anymore. You have to stay in the learning mode. Maybe I could demonstrate or share a weekly schedule that I've helped create with some students in my role as an advisor. So let me see if I can share my screen with this schedule. Okay. So the color highlights is when this student has class. Okay. This is what we're trying to do. So how can you ensure, let's say the student has 12 units, right? So they need to plan a minimum of 24 hours a week outside of class. You have classes typically Monday through Friday, right? But we can use Sunday to get us set up for the week. You could get assuming that you don't have a job, you could get a good 6 to 8 hours of study time on a Sunday. Now, if you have to work a job, let's say, you're at work from 8 until 1 or 2 o'clock. You can still, if you start at 3 or even 4, you can still get a good amount of study time between 4 and 9, or maybe even 4 and 10. That's 6 hours right there. We're not even saying 6 hours consecutively. You can break down your study sessions into increments of 30 minutes. There's something called the 45-15. So you can set aside 45 minutes that you're going to study and then take a 15-minute break. But when you take a break, you remove yourself from the studying environment. If it's your living room, right, go outside. If it's your dorm room, leave your dorm room. If it's at a library or a coffee shop, go outside for, those 10 or 15 minutes to kind of give yourself a chance to take a break from the material and then return to it. That part is important, especially if you study in your room, because the temptation to lay on your bed and take a nap that you intended for 10 or 15 minutes might turn into an hour. Okay. So with this schedule, you can see that we're dedicating 45 minutes starting at 12, and then we're going to get a 15-minute break, and then we're going to get back on the horn at 1 o'clock. We're going to go for 45 minutes. Then we're going to take an hour break. You can use that break however you wish. Then 3 o'clock, we're going to get back at it. But now we're on a different topic. 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute break. Then come 4 o'clock, we're back at it again. Then we got another hour break. Then we're getting back to it at 6 o'clock with another subject for 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute break. Then we're back on the horn at 7 to 7:45. Then we basically, from that time through 9 o'clock, we have a break. Then we get back on it at 9 o'clock for 45 minutes. You can decide what works for you. Maybe 45 minutes is too long, so maybe you got to do 30 minutes followed by a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break. It's all about what's going to work for you. Then when we get to the week, this person doesn't have time to review material in their class or for their class before. So we just go to class. There's a class right after, but guess what? They're going to review the material for the class that they just ended right here at 1 o'clock. They're going to take a break, maybe a couple breaks. Maybe they got things to do here. They got office hours to visit, or they got their kids to go pick up or something. Or if you are a lactating mother, you got to go to the lactation station on your campus and do some pumping, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's a study session at 4 o'clock that you're going to go to for math. So you're getting some support with this course up here. You can review the notes that you had, do homework, whatever. You got an hour here, use it well. Then you have a break. Then there's a study session. There's another lab, like a tutoring opportunity on campus that you can go to get help with math. You have a break here. Then you're going to study on your own for these for this one subject, biomedical engineering, for example. 45 minutes, we're starting at 8 o'clock. We get a 15-minute break and we're back on it at 9. So you can see we have a cutoff time. It's 11 o'clock. We're not doing any work at this time. We're going to bed here. So they're trying to use time before class if possible, if not in between classes, and for sure after class. And then they're giving themselves a day off. So pretty much once they're done with this class on Friday, they have that rest of the day off, plus they're giving themselves Saturday off as a reprieve. If they need to use Friday afternoon to review anything that gave them difficulty during the week, they can do that on Friday afternoon, but they know they're giving themselves a day off where they're not thinking about anything academic. That gives you time to do laundry, to go grocery shopping, to check in with your family relationships, your social relationships, what have you, or if you just want to relax. But come Sunday, you're getting back at it again. And we do this every week for the term. Because remember, each week builds off of the previous week. There should never be a time in the term where you're like, oh, I can just chill. No. If it's on your day off, for sure. But if you know you're supposed to be studying, then you need to go do that. So that's a weekly schedule. Now, this is a term schedule. And what we did here is the student went through all of their classes that they're enrolled to take for the term. And what they did was, so we have the 12-week term, Sunday through Saturday, week 1, right? So what's due for each class? They got reading assignments. They got to watch a video. They got their quizzes, right? They got a speech here. They got midterms. So they put it on this form right here, and they can check this instead of having to go back and look at their course syllabus or their Canvas or their Blackboard for every single course every week so they can figure out what's going on for that particular week. No, you got it in one place. This saves you valuable time. So hopefully this kinds of crystallizes what we were talking about. Maybe these documents don't work for you. Maybe you might want to use a planner instead of doing this. But the key is to do something.
Definitely. And I think, if you're one of those people that is like, oh, I'll write it down and I'll figure it out later. I'm one of those people, and I keep shooting myself in the leg every semester because I'm like, dang, I should have gotten more organized. But if you put things on your calendar on your phone, I think that you have access to your phone, right? And then most of the students out there probably have some sort of digital calendar or access to their phone calendar during class so you can cross-reference. So just using whatever works for you in terms of time management.
Thank you for tuning into Techo Guide, the app focused on bringing you tools and content to help you make better decisions about school, life, and career. We hope this episode has inspired you to pursue and excel in your own educational and career journey. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share.